Okay, welcome to my final project. This is my presentation for basic psychotherapy. We'll be doing an overview of 4 different therapies today. Um, and then some of the concepts and just ideas behind them. So we'll go ahead and get into it. So we'll have 4 therapies that we'll be looking at today. We'll be looking at existential therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, Adlerian therapy, which you might also know as individual psychology, is usually what it's commonly referred to as, and interpersonal therapy as well. We have 5 primary objectives with each therapy. We want to look at the origin and theoretical foundation of each therapy. We want to look at the key concepts and therapeutic goals of the therapies. We want to look at the primary techniques and interventions of each therapies. We'd look at the ideal client population and the presenting issues that we might see come into an office or a clinic for that we might want to employ these therapies in. And we'll just look at one brief case or like a clinical application example for each therapy. So to start, we'll look at existential therapy. So existential therapy is really rooted in existential philosophies. So these Sartre, these Nietzsche, Jean-Paul Sartre emphasized that humans are radically free and bear the full responsibility for their choices. And this relates to how existential therapists really often help clients confront and embrace their responsibilities in their lives as kind of this driving force in their lives. Existential psychotherapy really emerged as a psychotherapy movement during the mid 20th century. It was primarily developed by figures such as Viktor Frankl, Roland May. Frankl has this really incredible story about being a survivor of the Holocaust, and then going on to develop logotherapy, which stated that the primary motivating force in individuals is finding meaning in life. Frankel's experiences in Nazi concentration camps helped influence his understanding of the human capacity, uh, as you know, being able to find meaning even in the face of adversity. Um, and really, existential therapy just focuses on the human condition, free will, making meaning in your life, and confronting existential anxieties. Um, so there's a few key concepts in existential therapy. We look at the meaning of life, freedom, responsibility, isolation, death anxiety. These are all very relevant topics to existential therapy. We look at the existential anxiety versus neurotic anxiety. Existential anxiety being these fundamental questions about the meaning of life, and neurotic anxiety being just these unconscious fears about your impulses and past experiences and how they influence your current mental well being. We look at authenticity and self awareness, and we really look at individual responsibilities for their choices and actions. The therapy helps to aim clients really confront these kinds of existential concerns, find meaning in their personal lives, and living authentically is something that if you look into existential therapy, you really will see coming up a lot, even in the face of these life uncertainties. Um, there's a few primary techniques that are employed in existential therapy. We use reflection, clarification, a lot of open ended questioning. There's this real emphasis on dialogue between the client and the therapist and the therapeutic presence. This is especially emphasized because there's no standardized technique for existential therapy, but really the focus is just on the therapist being with the client and exploring the meaning and exploring these difficult terms that we talked about earlier, these difficult life questions. Some of the ideal populations, especially, might be these clients who are facing these life transitions. They might be aging. Their careers could change. There could be a death of a loved one. People who are going through these identity or crises in meaning. People facing, I don't want to say obviously, but people clearly facing existential anxiety or depression are going to be, wonderful candidates for the therapy that hopes to tackle these kinds of issues. Or individuals who are experiencing terminal illness or grief. Oops, we went the wrong way. So one of the little case example I put together is this 43-year-old male, John. He's experiencing these intense, debilitating bouts of existential anxiety that were sparked by the recent passing of his mother. And he fears the possibility of his own death in the future and the death of these other family members, these other social members that are close to him as well. The therapist employing existential therapy will help John explore just, I mean, the fact that death is inevitable, it is not something that really can be negotiated, but also that it's the shared human experience. Um, the sessions are going to focus on discussing meaning, loss, looking at the grief that he might be experiencing and how it's relating back to this existential anxiety he's experiencing. And John could be guided to confront and accept these existential givens rather than avoid them. So it is a given that you will eventually one day pass away. So confronting and accepting this will help him, hopefully, have a higher quality of life. Our next therapy is cognitive behavioral therapy. This therapy is incredibly popular, and often you might see it as the kind of go-to solution for everything. Really, it can be employed in a wide array of issues. It has a lot of strengths to it. It was developed by Aaron Beck in the 1960s, influenced by cognitive theory and behavioralism. I know, shocker based on the name. But it was founded on this idea that the thoughts, emotions, and behaviors of people are interconnected, and that these maladaptive thinking processes can lead to psychological distress. You hear a lot about cognitive distortions, and that is one of the main concepts of cognitive behavioral therapy. It's how are these negative thinking patterns affecting me? So naturally, some of the key concepts of cognitive behavioral therapy are these distortions. There's a wide array of these distortions. They have spreadsheets and worksheets that are often given, like catastrophizing, all or nothing thinking, overgeneralization. These automatic thoughts and underlying core beliefs also lead to cognitive behavioral therapy. And the clinicians will look at behavioral activation and exposure as well. But CBT really aims to help clients identify and restructure this distorted thinking. It's helping them improve their emotional regulation and promote these more adaptive behaviors through examination of what might be causing them. Um, so the primary techniques of cognitive behavioral therapy, this cognitive restructuring, thought records, exposure therapy, especially for anxiety or the specific phobia issues, activity scheduling and skills training. All of these relate to this this big point on the bottom that homework is central to progress. The clinician almost always will have some worksheet for you to do, some activity. The thoughts records, for example, I have an example of a thought record here. This is really to help individuals identify antecedents, these causes of these behaviors or these thoughts. What happens? How do they feel? What do they think? So this really helps break down their thought processes into these more tangible parts, because it's connecting the event, the thought, and then how that affects them. So by being more mindful of the effect that these events can have on them, individuals will hopefully see this growth that is desired. The ideal clients for cognitive behavioral therapy are people facing depression, anxiety disorders, substance use disorders, eating disorders. A lot of the maladaptive thought processes behind these could be addressed through some of the approaches to the cognitive distortions that we've previously kind of glossed over. Excuse me. It's really effective for clients who prefer structured, goal-oriented therapy. Um, this is important because, like with existential therapy, it is this more open-ended prompting from your clinician. This is very structured, very empirically backed. A lot of research has gone into these activities that they're giving you. So that is a very large strength for CBT. Our case example is this 23-year-old male named Joseph. He has these frequent bouts of catastrophic thinking. He could get a bad grade on a test and think to himself, "Oh, they're gonna kick me out of college." These thoughts kind of trigger panic attacks, insomnia, social isolation. He's withdrawing from these groups that he previously has associated himself with. A therapist will use thought records like the one we looked at to track and challenge these bouts of catastrophic thinking. So, what caused this thought? The poor grade on the test. How did this thought affect me? He goes through that process to help realize help him restructure this thought process in a way that is less maladaptive. So we're reframing these what if thoughts into these more realistic appraisals. So I received a bad grade on a test. Maybe that is due to my study habits, and instead of believing I'm going to be kicked out of college and worrying, not knowing what I can do, maybe I can restructure my thought process to, oh well, next time I can study in more effective manners. I'm not going to spend 20 minutes studying before the test starts. Adlerian therapy is our next therapy we'll look at. Like I said, often referred to as individual psychology. Um, Naturally, it is developed by Alfred Adler in the earliest 20th century. Adler was a colleague of Freud, but his therapy differs from Freud's views on psychoanalysis and emphasizes this social connectedness and purpose. He sees behavior as being very goal directed and rooted in striving for significance. So naturally, a lot of the key concepts of Adlerian therapy are going to be inferiority complex and compensation. We're looking at lifestyle and private logic. Social interest is a big one. I've spent about 5 minutes practicing Gemeinschaftsgefühl. I had it down before I started recording, I promise. But Gemeinschaftsgefühl is just really this sense of belonging and interconnectedness with others. And it really, kind of suggests the idea that this interconnectedness and these interpersonal connections are key to our well-being, that they will have this very large effect on our mental state. Adlerian therapy really helps to, or aims to help clients increase their self-awareness of their goals and thought patterns. Um, and relating back to Gemeinschaftsgefühl, it's trying to foster social connectedness and the senses of purpose, and encouraging more adaptive cooperative behaviors. So it's really seeing how you relate to others and how that affects you. Um, so we have a couple techniques that are employed. The lifestyle assessment is very critical. It looks at early memories, family roles, core beliefs, and sees how it affects your thought processes and behaviors in the present day. Um, you're trying to challenge faulty assumptions. You're looking at the private logic that is used and trying to bring it to the surface and bring it out so that you and your therapist can really examine where it comes from and how you could restructure that. Encouragement is an essential technique. Obviously, if we're relating to others, having that positive encouragement from your clinician is pretty essential. And it's really focused on building these strengths in your client and promoting them in these reasonable actions. So some of the ideal populations that we might have are individuals who are facing low self-esteem, maybe these feelings of inferiority, or these overcompensation behaviors. Maybe individuals who are struggling with life transitions, like we talked about earlier, maybe career change, loss in family, maybe aging. We're looking at family dynamics, identity. It's really often, since we're looking at the social aspect so much, it's really often used in individual settings, but it can also be employed in these group, family, or school-based settings. If we're looking at the social, or how my social relationships affect me, then these group settings can be really valuable for individuals. So the case example that I have here is about Maya, this 29-year-old woman who has these persistent feelings of inadequacy at work and in her social relationships. She's frequently comparing herself to others and believing she's never enough, despite having these successes at work. She was promoted at work, which has increased this fear of failure, um, these tendencies to socially withdraw from others, and it's really caused her to increase in her feelings of striving for perfectionism, which is causing this stress in her. Um, and what a therapist might do is the lifestyle assessment, which could reveal that Maya was the middle child in a highly competitive household, always competing for parent attention, maybe being outshone by her siblings, but all of this leading to these feelings of being overlooked. Therapy that's focusing on increasing her self-awareness on these early life patterns and challenging these perfectionistic beliefs could be very valuable for her when we're looking at it from the lens of Adlerian therapy. And our last therapy here is interpersonal therapy, IPT. It was originally developed in the 1970s by Gerald Klerman and Mirna Weissman, and it was originally designed to treat major depressive disorder. Um, it's grounded in three main areas, which I have laid out here: attachment theory, communication theory, and psychodynamic principles. Attachment theory, relating back to IPT, explores how disruptions and losses in close relationships contribute to psychological distress. So, how is grief from losing a loved one or separating, maybe from a marriage or another social relationship, going to affect me and my mental well-being? With communication therapy, IPT aims to really hope to improve communication skills, increase assertiveness, and reduce misunderstandings or these maladaptive patterns in interpersonal exchanges. And then with psychodynamic principles, it's trying to incorporate ideas such as these unconscious relational patterns rooted in early life. So this is very similar to the Adlerian psychology, um, or the Adlerian therapy as well. But IPT really emphasizes the link between these interpersonal problems and psychological symptoms. It is entirely focused on that. Some of the central idea of IPT is that improving this interpersonal function will lead to symptom reduction. So all of our key concepts and all of our therapeutic goals will relate back to improving interpersonal function. A lot of the key concepts, like I said, is grief, these interpersonal role disputes, role transition, interpersonal deficits, really looking at how all of that leads to increases or decreases in functioning. And IPT is really helping the AIM clients reduce their maladaptive symptoms through improved communication and social support, and at the same time strengthening the interpersonal relationships as well. A lot of these skills are going to help improve maybe these poor relationships, but also help establish strong relationships in the future. Um, some of the main primary techniques of interpersonal therapy are these interpersonal inventories. So we're mapping our key relationships, we're clarifying roles and expectations, and we're really looking at our communication analysis and role play. So with your therapist, you're going to be going through these, and a lot of you will be able to build these social skills with your therapist. This is not homework you have to take home like cognitive behavioral therapy. This is something you can employ in the office with them face to face, and they will help you with the technique. I was involved in this form of therapy for an individual where I came in and the therapist had me role play as somebody. I wasn't role playing, it was true, but I was serving as a new individual, somebody they had never encountered before, and they were working on just simple communication, nothing crazy, but it's just I thought it was nice to be able to see, um, from a clinical side, what this kind of a therapy technique would look like, because usually all I'm focused with is the testing, and really looking at that side of it and the behavior during the tests rather than the actual, um, we're helping our client with these skills. Some of the ideal populations of interpersonal therapy are clients who are facing major depressive disorder, these grief and bereavement issues, adolescents and older adults who are experiencing the role shifts or social isolation, also very favorable for this type of therapy, because it's really best suited for these clients who with identifiable relationship stressors or life changes. So naturally, role shifts are going to fall into that category pretty well. And my final case example is Priya. She's this 36-year-old woman who's facing these depressive symptoms following her recent divorce. She has low mood, social withdrawal. She's experiencing identity loss, and co-parenting conflicts with her ex-partner. Her therapist is going to help her identify this role transition from being a wife to being a single co-parent, um, and the naturally resulting interpersonal role disputes with her ex-spouse as being these key problem areas. Um, Her therapist is going to use role playing to rehearse possible difficult conversations that could come up with her ex-spouse, maybe ex-spouse's family. It could be her child that has these difficult conversations about the marital relationship being fractured with her. And really, it's going to help her work on her assertiveness as well, which is this assertiveness is going to boost her confidence in herself, which is going to lead back and help her as she faces this life change, this major life change. And the therapist might also focus on enhancing her support network and helping redefine her self-concept post-divorce. So these are all very powerful things that could be employed for her, that could lead her to have, these increased outcomes. And those are all of the therapies that I have to go through today. So I thank you kindly for listening, and hope that you were able to learn something. So thank you.